Philip Stoughton. I'm at Electronica 2024 on the IPC booth, and I'm joined by Vidar from Confidee. Great to see you again. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I think we first spoke very shortly after you'd started the business. Give me a very quick introduction to remind people of what you do, and just give me a little bit of an insight into how things have gone. I mean, it's been what, two years?
Yeah, 2.5 years actually. So we started back in 2022. It was a spin-off from a previous company in Norway. So we do PCB, what we call PCB brokering. We have a headquarter in Oslo, Norway. Then we have salespeople around in Europe to support our customers. It has been a very rough start. We have gone from 1 employee to 23 now.
Wow.
We have had certifications, which is our main focus. We want to be seen upon as a professional company. So we have the first year we accomplished to have the ISO 9001 and also the AS 9120 for the aerospace and defense business. And this year we will have the ISO 27001 for the information security. It's been quite hectic 2 years, but we are looking bright at the future.
Yeah.
Of course, we're focusing a lot of compliance work.
Yeah.
So that's. It seems
and is
like
that
it's a
compliance as a service, compliance as a consultancy, or just compliance within the supply of the printed circuit boards?
It's compliance in the supply chain. That's what they're focusing on. And of course, there's new regulations coming all the time. And since we are working across a lot of countries in Europe, there are different regulations in each country. Even though countries are a part of EU, they have their national government rules to follow as well, which deviates a little bit from country to country. So we are there to help them to solve that puzzle.
Yeah, I think it's increasingly important. And when I look at what's happening in the world politically, we seem to be moving from a very globalized trade to a much more protectionist style of trade. Again, that plays to the importance of having regulatory support, compliance support. That must be something that your customers are feeling is significantly important at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And I think just when we started, it was kind of new still in Europe, but we see more and more requests from customers which are actually, they want our service in that sense. And I think that what has developed for the last 2-3 years is, of course, as you say, is people want to bring the technology back to Europe. Unfortunately, there's not enough capacity in Europe. So that's another political discussion that we need to have in Europe.
It's interesting you say there's not enough capacity. I wonder if I started my career as a printed circuit board designer decades ago, and was actually working in the PCB industry. I guess when Europe was 20 to 25% of the world market, working in the UK when there were 280 board manufacturers there, and there is a fraction of that now. So it feels like clearly there's less capacity, but way less demand. We're sub 2% of the world market, and there's a growing concern that there's a critical mass issue below which the survival of the industry is of a concern.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at UK, then the manufacturers there probably had a lot of business in telecommunication and industrial products, and then everybody moved out to especially China or to Asia. So all the factories in Europe was forced to close down the larger factories and keep the small ones for high tech. Now but now we would like to have those larger factories back. So big customers are asking for large demand in Europe, which is not there's not enough capacity at the moment. So I think that will still be a struggle for many years.
Are they prepared to pay for that?
That's another question. I think one thing is Europe, but we also have the demand for outside China. And if you look at like Thailand or Malaysia, it's still a significant price difference. And customers want to. They say that they will accept maybe for the couple of first years, but I think it's still the logistics, the supply chain of the raw materials is still in China. Even though they're starting to move out, it will still be a price difference. I think a lot of customers are asking for it to have us an option outside China, but we don't really see that they are starting to move the business yet. But I think that will be a good way to be some intermediate between moving all back to Europe that we have a supply from Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a demand-led process, as you say. So if we can establish demand in Europe for made in Europe printed circuit boards, we can perhaps look at expanding the capacity. But for that expanded capacity to be competitive, it has to be very modern. It has to be very heavily automated. We have to take as much labour out as possible.
Yeah.
Is that something you see the board manufacturers here taking on board and able to do? And I think part of it is them looking for protection themselves from government. Is that a solution? Or?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. I think we see in Europe as well, people are working a lot with automation. They're also working a lot to streamline the production process. So it's like they are using consultancies to actually optimize the process flow in their factories. So I think that's naturally happened the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So we see that there's a lot of more automation also in Europe, even though the quantities are smaller.
Yeah.
And there's they're typically a small series, and they have to change quickly.
Yeah.
That means the setup needs to be quick as well.
Yeah.
But again, I think that all the PCB industry needs some incentives from the governments that they want to focus on Europe.
Yeah.
So you have like the CHIPS Act in US, and they are also focusing a lot on PCB industry. So I think that it's necessary for that to happen in Europe as well. To also want people to invest in PCB factories in Europe. Actually.
Yeah, I think the difference is in Europe, you don't have a president that can sign act on his executive act on his first day of being in power. You have 28 states that have got to agree and get that process moving forward. But I think there's a desire and an incentive to do it. When you talk about automation, I think that's really interesting. Part of that automation process is the digital transformation of the supply chain itself. Do you look at a lot of software automation in what you do, and are you using AI there to
we are using just AI like internally. We are working a lot with automation of the because we are not board manufacturers, so we are like just facilitating the deal. So we are working a lot with automating the engineering queries. So we want to build the portal as transparent as possible between the manufacturer and the customer, so they can actually see what's happening with their boards, also with their data, which is needs to be protected, so they can at any given time see who have had access to the data. So that's a kind of a good way to also solve some of the challenges with sending emails back and forth, transferring files, which is also a critical point on the PCB data.
Yeah, and being able to interrogate those emails and PDFs or whatever, and create something that is a universally acceptable file.
Which is IPC have been working on for many years. Hopefully they will succeed, but it will probably take some more time.
Again, like any government, it's a slow-moving machine, isn't it? And commercially, we'd all like things to move a bit quicker, particularly in such a competitive environment. When I look at brokering, the way it's been converted to marketplace by companies like Fictive, Xometry in the 3D space, in the CNC space, a lot of that is that uploading data, design for manufacturing checks on the fly, getting stuff ready really quickly. Do you see that as critical, particularly at small volumes?
Yeah, of course it is. I think for our concern is actually that you need to control who has access to data. Where do you store the data, which is now coming in the cloud policies. So I think that's the main concern by using cloud-based services. So that needs to be protected and to be controlled in a certain way. That's why we wanted to go for the ISO 27001 certification.
Yeah, and that's why I think the ethos of the business, which is compliance, which is regulatory, which is very process driven and very secure
Yeah.
is really important to people right now. So I think there's a real validity to that business model.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not only for, like, historically it's for defense and aerospace, but now we see that all industries actually have the same demand.
Yeah.
Telecommunication, for medical, for most of the critical industrial products as well. Like all from metering to actually to the end or like info system in cars, where there's a lot of data which is you can extract from that and can be used in a, let's say, not in a good way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it brings the model of brokering forward from the old days when it was just someone in a car with a telephone driving around, buying and selling circuit boards for a margin. So I think what's important when you are a middleman in any process is explaining to the market where you're adding additional value, where there is real insight provided, real additional data, additional protections, additional compliance.
And that's what we're trying to achieve with our portal as well. We want to be as transparent as possible, and we want to be that thin layer between, but still show what we are actually adding as a value to the customer. So again, I know that there's a lot of people talking about transparency, but that's the whole idea why we started Confidee. It's actually to be the transparent partner between the customer and the supplier.
I think it's important. Vidar, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of the show. It's been a real pleasure. I like what you're doing. Let's talk about it again soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.